All right, so Mark, take us back before real estate. What were you doing, man? How did you find your way into our business?
Well, I had started my first business at the age of 22 and built it up in 3 years as a travel business. And after that, I had my name out around town. I was able to pick up a lot of consulting gigs with different companies like MGM, Iceland Air, Station Casinos. And it was all project-based. So if they needed to launch something or test something, I was that strategic marketing and sales guy that could kind of put the pieces together and say, this is something that has potential to earn good revenue or not.
Okay, so slow down just a sec, Mark, because, all right, you're in Vegas, and you glossed right over the very first business, and I was fascinated when I read about it. What was that first business?
So believe it or not, I was working for a builder running a community center, and I was meeting residents every day. I was like their concierge facility manager, 21 years old. And they would come up to me and say, hey, I need help getting a friend into the club tonight. You know, they're in town for the weekend with 20 guys. And do you know anybody? Well, all the guys I went to college with at UNLV ended up working the front doors or managing the bars. And so I had all these relationships that I could call somebody and say, hey, do you mind helping me out with this? Well, it turned into a regular thing every week. And the word got out around the neighborhood. And I had met a guy who owned a website called BachelorBlowout.com, and it was a bachelor party planning company. And he used it as his master's degree program. He had to create a business for USC master's program, and so that was it. And he didn't know what to do with it because he wasn't from Vegas. And so we partnered, and I used my relationships with his tech background, and he had the website knowledge, and we worked together and built this into over the course of a couple of years, went from like 20 guys a night to bachelorette parties, divorce parties, birthday parties in Vegas, New Orleans, Miami, New York City. And then we had to find something that was equidistant in Europe from New York City. So our New York City clients got tired of Vegas, and we started going to Iceland and St. Martin and Prague. And we had hosts and concierge in each city. And it turned into a multi-million-dollar travel business. It was more of a .com that, the value was in the data more than the service. It wasn't very fruitful in the service side, but the database was an incredible, 100,000 people from all over the country that like to party and have a good time and have the disposable income to do it.
Well, that's always a really cool business model. And, not every 22-year-old decides to get into business for themselves. I'm wondering, is that something that you had known about yourself, that you wanted to be an entrepreneurial business owner, or did this opportunity just present itself and you took action?
Yeah, I've always, I think I was born with the sales gene. In middle school, I don't know if you're familiar with DECA, the business program they try and get kids into. They sell those entertainment books. I think I sold like 75 books within a couple of weeks. And then the teacher came to me and said, I don't know what you're doing, but you definitely are going to be in business someday.
Right.
And so then I moved to Vegas at 18. I didn't have a job. I was going door to door with a mechanic shirt on. I think my name was Kyle. And I was selling $20 oil change package cards, discount cards. And this guy would take 10 college kids and drop us off in a different community every day. And he would pick us up 4 or 8 hours later with hopefully an empty bag and just a stash of cash. So I loved it. I mean, that's where I got my door knocking. I can be rejected 100 times over and it doesn't bother me.
Well, I did not know until this moment that I wanted to someday own a bachelor party planning company, but I mean, it sounds very exciting.
Only in your 20s. Only.
Okay, well, I'm aged out of that one then, unfortunately. So, all right. So then bring us into the next thing. So you cut your teeth in business doing those things, door to door, oil salesman, bachelor party planning company, and then consulting with these major brands like Iceland Air, which shout out to Iceland Air. I mean, I love Iceland Air. So obviously you know what you're doing on the sales and marketing side. You're consulting these big brands. How did you get to real estate then?
So I get a call one day from a friend in the hotel industry who says, I've got this client who's a big real estate coach in the country, and he has these big conferences, and he wants to bring in a new marketing person to help build the business. And they're based in Vegas, and I think you're the perfect fit. So I said, sure, I'll meet with them. And it was Mike Ferry organization. And I met with them knowing nothing about real estate. And we came to an agreement for me to go, run the marketing department. And so I had firsthand access to every kind of training resource I would want. And I really wasn't in the real estate world. I didn't know enough about it. I wasn't really intrigued by it. But after meeting agents day in and day out, coming through their office and hearing the failures that are hopefully going to find the key to success and grow their business, and then the success stories of, without the knowledge and resources, they were still successful. From my background, I looked at it like, wow, the opportunity is there for somebody who has a background like mine, which is a combination of hospitality, customer service, sales strategy, marketing background. It all just kind of is what a realtor is. We have to do all of that. And I didn't realize it was that complex, right? I thought realtors open doors for people. And so after hearing these stories, I'm like, you know what? I'm done consulting. I'm done helping other people grow their businesses. It's been a great run. But I was turning 35 and told my wife I'm ready, for like the final chapter. I helped so many different companies. I'm tired. I want one thing to focus on for the next 15 years, and let's just put all into that. And so I decided after 1 year there to get my license and go full-time real estate, knowing that over that year I trained every day. I would go to work for Mike, and I would also write out my scripts, and I would also recite my scripts in the mirror, and it was on my lunch hour officially. So but no, I knew going into the full time that I had spent 6 months practicing what I needed to practice.
Well, Joe, doesn't it make you think of like what we say? Like, I mean, real estate is the product that you sell, but the business is really the experience that you're providing clients. And that's what you're saying. Like you are already experienced in the hospitality, the concierge, the sales, the marketing, those concepts, which really is what we spend a lot of time teaching and coaching people, more so than the actual product, right? Like you can find resources that know the product super well. And if you really niche down and are good at those other aspects, you should be successful at this business. That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I love your perspective. You're they're working for Mike Fair, and you're seeing all these agents succeeding at a high level who, as you said, didn't even have all the tools and resources they needed, and they were still making it work. So obviously a really great introduction for you into real estate. So tell us about that first, second, third year in real estate. Coming into it with the experience of Mike, did that mean it sort of demoed for you quickly and easily, or did you still experience sort of that delay getting into real estate that some people experience, where it takes sometimes 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to start building a solid pipeline?
Yeah, well, I definitely fell into a rabbit hole. Mental toughness wasn't there, I guess, that moment, but I got my license. I went full-time July 1st. And spent the next 3 months relocating my mother to town, getting our house. I fully gutted our house and spent 6 months renovating that, overseeing it myself. I did a bunch of stuff other than revenue producing activities. And my wife looked at me one day and said, you've sold 3 homes this fall. Are you really going to do this, or are we just, kicking tires? And I think that was the moment I was like, okay, reality check. I did commit to this. We are going to do this. And January 1, I got real serious. And so first year, 17 transactions. I would say that it was a contribution of my wife is a wealth manager at Merrill Lynch, and she contributed 25% of the business that year through her clients that had needs. And it was just a natural referral opportunity because we are more of a family-based business operator. Like I know her clients, she knows mine. We share family type stories with each other with our clients. So we're vested in the relationship with them. So that was easy. The rest of it was a grind. I mean, I was doing employee discounts for big corporations in town. So I had access to their dining rooms, and I would go in there and sit around and talk to people and focus on managers. If I sell a manager, they're going to refer their whole team to me. So I was in casinos, utility companies, Southwest Gas, NV Energy, all over the place. And so I'd sit there for 6 hours and wait for people to come through. And it was time consuming, but it got me business. And, but I had to give up a chunk of that, so there's costs involved to all of that. It wasn't just like I was banking, good money right out of the gate.
Well, I mean, what you just said there was time involved, right? You committed to doing prospecting activity, and
Sure.
and you even used the phrase revenue producing activity that maybe was lacking in those first several months. And when we talk about prospecting versus marketing, this is a big area of conversation right now as we are business planning for 2022. Prospecting is time intense and active in nature. And Mark, that's what you're getting at, like sitting there for 6 hours. That's time intensive, and yet it led to a big chunk of your business. So take me into a little bit the progression then of the growth of your business. I mean, what year was this that you got in?
So this was, I got my license 2014, January 1, 2015 is when I became serious. So we went first year, 17 transactions, second year, 24 transactions, third year, 28 transactions plus a son. My wife had a baby that year, and I definitely took about 3 or 4 months, really, focused on family. I wasn't stressing about income. We had enough in the bank and we had a good pipeline. My wife had her business. So if the business fell off a cliff, it wasn't going to hurt us. I felt like I had enough momentum. So I really enjoyed the first 6 months of fatherhood, and then kicked back into gear in 2019. We did, at that point I brought a TC on. It was a virtual TC that I paid per transaction. So no office overhead. It was somebody who was fully trained, that was way more experienced than I was, and brought that support to me rather than me having to worry about her. It was her, babysitting me. And that was really nice, because at that point it went 36 transactions, then 42. And so that was year 5. I knew I was going to have to make a change at that point because I had no answers. I didn't know how to grow the team. I started bringing agents on thinking that I was able to teach this or treat this like a business, but it was different. Building the team is different than the business. And my broker at the time was just a boutique brokerage, so they didn't have the answers. I was really just trial by fire, throwing money at things, throwing people into opportunities that weren't converting, and I was really frustrated. And so that's when I started to look at brokerages.
So I want to ask you a question about something you just said there. I find it intriguing. You said building a team different than building the business. What did you mean by that? Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, it's so in business you can have systems and models, which we all talk about. But in building the team, the personnel, it's more about them, the psychology of how they operate, how they're going to impact the team environment. If you bring in somebody that the personality is not a fit or they don't have the skill set, you're now taking away, they're not alleviating things from me, they're actually adding to my plate. And I was consistently bringing people on that I had to pour into them when I was really looking for people like my TC who could take things off my plate. And in the business though, like you can build systems right away for one person that will get you to a certain point. This was just a different thing for me. I always had gone into businesses and consulted where I didn't have to manage the personnel. It was more me saying, here's the systems and models for you to be successful. Now go train your team and watch it happen. I didn't get to do the training part most of the time, which is now I realize it was nice.
All right, so you're doing 36, 42 transactions. You've got this transaction coordinator. You're playing around with different hires. You're feeling frustrated. Eventually, you transition into KW. Tell us a little bit about that transition, and more specifically, what changed with your mindset and with your strategy when you made that transition to eventually build into where you are now.
I so attended a few classes. Started with Buck, invited me to ESO with Kristen Cole, and I attended that here in Las Vegas. This was February. I ended up deciding to move my license in June. So February, I take the class, and the book was every answer I was looking for over the last 5 years about how to hire, when to hire, what's the job description. It was like I'm sitting there going, I haven't even started the class yet, and I'm looking through it going, I can leave right now, and this, and I can just stay where I am, and I'm pretty sure I can get a little further than I am today. But then going through it for 2 days and really hearing the stories and the experiences she had, I can't get those by just reading a book. And so I quickly realized by the people in the room that this is the culture I need to be around. Is there's a lot of sharing going on, a lot of follow-up sharing, meaning if I felt like it was too vague in the class, I could reach out to Joe or to whoever's sitting next to me, which we all shared our contact info, of course. And I said, hey, you said you have already done this part. Can you elaborate where you hit the snag, or how did you overcome this problem? And everybody is willing to help. So it's really, I found that everything is there for me. I just have to raise my hand or make the call and say, I need more detail on that. And that's what I got. So June 1st.
Mark, you talked about when you were, making those first several hires, how, really you were looking, you should have been getting someone who is more like your TC, taking it off. And since you brought up ESO and Kristen, Kristen says all the time, like it's important to put yourself at least too deep between a job that you don't want to get back. And if you make a hire and you're getting pieces of the job back, like you should know really, really quickly as a leader, you probably didn't make the right hire. And if you did, it means that something happened in your training where you fell short. And so it's one of those two things. And so for anyone out there who is, like, I need leverage in my life, and I'm going through that process of finding that talent, or maybe I have identified and brought someone onto my team, you've got to ask yourself, okay, are you getting pieces of that job back? And if you are, is it because you didn't train appropriately and you need to really pick up the slack on that? Or is it someone who is just self-selecting out and you need to get out of business with?
I believe in that wholeheartedly, that a strong leader is going to take responsibility, and, everyone's going to make mistakes. Some people sometimes need to be taught twice or three times on something. It's okay. But really, having that frame of mind of, what could I do differently to articulate this better? Or am I teaching it in a way that they're digesting it? Are they visual, verbal? What's the best environment for them? And I never asked those questions in an interview before taking the classes through KW. This isn't like this is a sponsored event, but like the career visioning, the 30, 60, 90, I'd never had an onboarding plan like that. And I never had people take personality tests to understand how we can motivate them and how they would blend into the team environment. That was a game changer for me. And the first 90 days, going back to your original question, what did that first period at KW look like? I told Buck, my team leader at our office at KW Southwest, I'm committed to kind of shutting my business down from a prospecting standpoint the first 90 days to make sure that I 100% embrace everything that you guys have to offer, attending classes, familiarizing myself with the technology, everything about it. I mean, I had to understand the language. And so, but the first thing I knew that we all came to the agreement on is I needed to hire a real full-time assistant at my production level. The TC was great, but the ideas I had and the ability to grow the business was greater than something that I can do myself. And I needed a strong right hand to be able to get me through that. So it took 13 interviews to get that person. But that was after taking career visioning, doing it the right way, finding the holes where I would have absolutely hired probably 8 out of 12. And then taking the class, I would remember a question that would be like, oh, let me ask a little bit deeper on that one. And then I would find the answer I was looking for that I knew they weren't the right fit. And we move on to the next one. It was a process, but it worked. I mean, that was 13th interview was my assistant, Maria, who's still with me today, 2.5 years later, and is my operations manager and my client care manager. And that's a whole other story of what I've brought her through. The training has been side by side the entire time. So she can run my business at this point.
What I'm hearing you talk about, Mark, is this idea of being able to step back in order to move forward, meaning sometimes we have to take revenue off the table to hire more leverage, which gives us more bandwidth to reach our goals. Sometimes you have to take 90 days out of lead generation to commit to fully understanding the business foundations to then be able to go restart and rebuild. And so sometimes we have to make that short-term sacrifice so long as we're willing to do the work in that amount of time to then continue building. And obviously you've done that because you were able to more successfully begin to hire people. So talk to us a little bit about that. What are some lessons that you've learned in the actual management of your team, of people and relationships?
The process matters. the time you take to pour into them on the front end, the beginning of that relationship, the faster you can start to delegate stuff down. But the trust factor doesn't happen overnight. And that unease feeling you have of a payroll and, what ifs doesn't go away. You just have to decide, is this the path I want to take or not? Because if they see you're not committed to them, then they're going to be gone. And if they're really good and you lose them, that's a real shame for you and your business. So you can't just tiptoe into it, and I know every class trains it. Don't think of it as a $40,000 salary or $60,000 salary. Think of it as a 30-day investment and another 30-day investment. And if, they don't make it that far, then you've invested $2,500, $5,000, and hopefully you got some value during that time and they did something for you. But if they didn't, then you shouldn't really have them along that far. So, so once I got over that and I hired her and saw the business immediately start to grow, that was it. Then I was 100% committed. Within 60 days of her being on my team, we had escalated so many things that I wanted to do for years, and they were done. Like my list was getting shorter and shorter, and we took on some bigger projects, and she was the one who tested everything I wanted to try. So instead of me spending the time, I can say, I want you to try this for 90 days. Let's see what traction we get. And then not only did we test it, but now I have her trained in that area of my business. So I can now think about the next area.
I love that. And it's such a good reminder too, that you're getting into business with someone for 30-day increments and you're making really 30-day investments into the process of your business and it returns. So now 2.5 years in to this relationship, I want to ask you this, and maybe it's something that you're dealing with or not, but long-term retention of employees, right? And, people in your business who are making a massive impact, because, you shared with us off air in this last year, you've essentially doubled your business. Right. And I know that that's in large part to your operations manager. So when you think about that tremendous growth, how are you thinking through the long-term retention of having an integrator with you like that, who is really, growing the business alongside of you? Yeah. Any thoughts or wisdom that you've learned?
Yeah, it's ownership, not tangible monetary ownership, but in a way it is. So, aside from a base, we have different incentives. So they understand how the business works. We have a profitability bonus each month. And then we just got back. This is going to sound bad because not everyone knows the numbers. So it's going to sound like life's just too good, but we busted our butt this year. To your point, from moving to KW, we were at just over 11 million that year that I moved. The next year, which is last year during the pandemic, we did about 30 million, 28 to 30 million in volume. And then this year we'll be at 55 roughly. And so that took a lot of work. My team was super committed this year. They did everything I asked of them. And last week we just went to Maui. So I took them, the entire team plus one. We went down for 4 nights and I let them just enjoy. It wasn't a work thing. They didn't have to go do anything other than have dinner with me one night. But they got to relax and unwind and recharge. And there's, obviously a reason behind why Maui. I have an office there and one broker salesperson there that I've been working with for 2 years. And I wanted them to see what my why was, what my passion is to vacation there with my wife a few times a year. And eventually we want to own and semi-retire there. So this is my way to build some roots in that community. And I wanted them to see why I work so hard. So they got it. And if they want to be a part of that too, they could. So that's there's a lot more to than just salary. They have to have purpose. They have to want to be around you. They want to believe in what you believe in. So it all matters.
So I love how you think creatively through that, and I'll join your team remotely and go to Maui next year. You can have me for an hour a week.
Right.
You just got to hit your numbers.
Well, that's the wisdom that David was asking for, the wisdom to be able to see the bigger picture and be willing to make an investment in your people so that they understand the why, the vision, and their role in it. And that really is an incredible leadership lesson. obviously with this growth and the amount of time and energy you're pouring into your business and your people, on the other hand, you do have, you mentioned you have a wife and a son and the personal life side of things. And obviously there's some overlap there. Talk to us about how you're able to kind of compare or rate your work performance compared to your personal performance and hitting your personal goals and relationship goals.
So in my 20 years business experience, I've learned that you have your ebb and flow of the business demand. There's times where you're going to be consumed with the business. There's times where it's slower, or maybe you're coming off a big initiative and you don't need to pour into it as much. And so when I got into real estate and we committed to the real full-time January 1 thing, I told my wife that the next couple of years are the most important for me to actually get over a hump so that I don't have that insecurity month to month. I can't live like that. This has to eventually become a business that I can rely on. And I always use if I get hit by a truck analogy, which happens too often in our town, so I'm switching to something I haven't figured out what. But if I decide I want to retire tomorrow in Maui, I can rely on the team to do what we set it up to do. And so balance-wise, I have always held a hard line. When I'm committed to the family, I'm committed to the family. When it's time to really pour into the business, I explain it to my wife and she understands, and she's the same way. She owns her business, and there's times where she's on the phone all night, but it's not something we try to make a routine. So I've really enforced that. This year, January 1, I told the team, I am implementing my vision and goal of me having a quality of life outside the office that is harmonious with my family. And I am no longer going to be taking team calls after 6 p.m. I'm available to all of them from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then on the weekends as needed. Of course, if they're in transaction and it's urgent, they just have to text me and I will take those calls. But I've built in systems where Maria, now my assistant, is able to take a lot of those calls. And that's her role. It's her time to pour in the nights and weekends because she doesn't have a 4.5-year-old at home. She has a 14 and a 15-year-old at home, and they don't really want her around all the time. So she has the time. This is her time to earn a little extra by working the extra hours, and I have incentivized her for that. And so I have a very good balance right now. You can achieve balance, but it's not consistent. You can't expect it to just be, I've achieved it now, no longer do I have to worry about nights and weekends. There's going to be times where I want to go around town and tour the 12 open houses my team is running that day, or that one client who absolutely has to meet me on a Saturday morning for a listing appointment. I'm going to go do that. But it's not a routine, and it's not something where, my wife is saying, enough of this. She understands it when I need to do that.
It really does come down to the conversations, right, Mark? I mean, you describe the conversation you had with your wife that, hey, I'm going to commit to this thing. You're describing the conversations you're having with your leadership team around what you're expecting in your life and why it's important to you and their expectations. It's like it's just a conversation that needs to be that can happen and can continue to happen over time, so we're all on the same page. Getting clear on values and expectations really can be a very unemotional conversation if you're having it at the front end of the relationship rather than having it when it's already too late and emotions are high because expectations aren't being met. And that's really what I hear you saying.
And I will say, though, to new agents, I wouldn't be so ambitious too early in the business because it will bite you. When every single deal counts, you want to make yourself available, as long as it's not going to ruin your relationship at home or throw you out of whack in another way. You do want to be answering your phone as much as you can. You want to get over that hurdle, 10 transactions, whatever your number is, so that you have the financial stability. Once you're comfortable and you have reserves or you have support staff doing the stuff for you, then you can have the higher standards, but you've got to earn it before you get to that point.
Yeah, it's a good distinction.
I really respect how you put that, because I mean, if you think through like the cash flow quadrant or whatever, you really do start as a self-employed individual, right? And as a self-employed individual, your livelihood rests on your commission income. When you're a true business, you're operating with capital and reserves and all of these things that enable you to build in leverage and take opportunities. So yeah, I mean, as someone who is married and has a wife, that's also a business owner, I really respect how you put those things. And Joe is Exactly correct. It's the conversations and the expectations up front so that when you enter into those seasons that exist where you do have to push the gas, you don't always know when opportunity is going to show up. And there's sometimes as business owners where unique opportunities show up. And if you're not ready to push the pedal to the ground, like you're going to miss that opportunity. We were talking to Trent Corbin a couple of weeks ago, and Trent's doing $100 million in volume a month. And he says one of the biggest metrics in his business is whether or not every single person on his payroll has at least, I think it was like 20% capacity, in their lives. Because the biggest value in his business is when opportunity shows up, are we ready to take it and run with it? And I really thought that what you said, Mark, what Joe said, and what he gave us a couple weeks ago all kind of goes together very, very nicely.
I agree. Yeah, it's we definitely, we talk in the training class about anticipating your growth and making sure you're staffed for the growth, not just try to catch up after the fact. We're at that point too. I mean, we just hired somebody yesterday to be an assistant to Maria, basically backfilling her position and being my executive assistant, so she can grow into that operation side and really focus on my clients as I step out of production. So we're anticipating that for January, February, but she's going to be training November, December so that we are ready for it. And you have to do that. Otherwise, you spend 3 months trying to catch up, and all you sacrifice is the level of service, the level of communication to your team, because you're too busy. I had to get up at 3:30 this morning and start doing my budget because I've been telling the team I'm doing it every day for the last week. But then things come up. Major client issues have been coming up this week with final walkthroughs and property conditions, and it needed me to sit through it. And so the budget didn't get done. So I had to carve out 3 hours this morning before the team started calling me. And you have to do it sometimes.
I think he actually just got up at 3:30 to prepare for our show. But
totally busted.
We'll go with the budget story.
Mark, you mentioned your relationship with Buck a few times, your team leader. And for anybody that's not with KW, team leader is like, the CEO of your local brokerage. How important was the role, the relationship with him? It sort of sounds like in some ways he sort of mentored you or helped guide you. Talk to us a little bit about that relationship and how important it is to have somebody outside of your business influencing you in an effective way.
Sure. So Buck is a team leader, and I don't know if every office is the same where they focus on the top 10% or top 20%, but Buck's job is to really focus in on that top 20% of agents who want to grow into a bigger business. And so it's something that I felt like was a privilege to be a part of that group, and I took full advantage of it. Without really knowing the parameters of I was only supposed to get a half an hour a month with him, I was walking down to his office every day with an idea or a opportunity, and it became a routine. And so fast forward 2.5 years, I've been officed right next to his office for the last 6 months or so, and I can now yell my ideas through the thin wall, and he will come running into my office going, "Tell me more." And so I get his ear daily at this point, and it's beyond just a, hey, I have a question. It is we have huge opportunities. Some of my clients have turned into bigger opportunities with real estate investment trusts in the $1 billion range that I didn't know how to process that. I didn't know even how to handle the commercial side of our industry. And Buck, being from the commercial side, was able to bring the resource to me and represent me on the commercial side. And so that's turning into a whole new vertical for me because of his support. We do all kinds of stuff together at this point. I mean, I have ideas that I know aren't the right fit for my team, so I give them to him, and he'll share them with other agents in the office who it might be a better fit for. There's challenges in the office that if he's not available, I gladly step in to just offer advice to other agents in the office. So I'm present in the office, giving back to everyone in there, whoever needs it. I'm there for them. I monitor our group page on Facebook. If there's questions, I'm on there daily. So that's my give back to him in exchange for what they do for me. And I feel like we have a strong relationship where the reciprocity is very equal. And that's the way it should be.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned, which was that you didn't realize you were only supposed to get 30 minutes a month. And so you just sort of started taking the initiative and he started giving you a lot more time. David, I want your opinion on this as a team leader. I feel like that's a good lesson to learn. If you're willing to ask the question and ask for help, I feel that most leaders are willing to give the amount of time that you need if they know you're going to put it into action and if they know you're going to take it seriously and implement. And obviously you've done that at a super high level, Mark. So, I mean, is that a fair statement, David? I feel like a coach, a leader, or mentor wants nothing more than somebody that's going to put it into action and will be willing to spend more time.
I think one of the reasons why we're in this business and in the specific role of running brokerages is because one of the things that fills us up most is to see someone take action on an idea and go and be massively successful. And so I would agree with that. If someone is going to actually ask questions and listen to the feedback, whether it's positive or potentially negative, right? And they're going to heed that advice and then go take some type of action or shift it to someone else in the office. I mean, nothing fills my heart more than to see that type of give back. Like you said, you use the word reciprocity, and that's what's beautiful. And so, like, yeah, throw away the half an hour a month to someone who's going to take action on that, and then in turn give it back to the family at your local brokerage. I mean, that's phenomenal. So when are you expanding to Scottsdale? We can always use more people like that.
Well, we'll talk later. We just went on a trip a few weeks ago. I brought Buck with me and a couple of my agents. I had won a private jet for the day at a charity auction here in town. The deal was too good. It was too good to be true. I'll just leave it at that. It wasn't as much as people think. And I decided to use it as a day trip to San Diego so that we can announce my luxury team and introduce everyone at the KW Carlsbad office. So we reached out, Buck helped facilitate that. So we flew out there for the day and talked about Vegas. And Buck was there with me, as I would say 60% of my presentation was something that he does here in town at a very high level. He presents this socioeconomic impacts in the Las Vegas market. And it's super informative. Hundreds of people show up every time. And so he came and presented that to the agents in Carlsbad. And so that was something where, it helps raise awareness of our office. If he has, people want to expand into Vegas, now they know Buck. But for me, it was bringing somebody that had something of value to an audience that needed to know about the Vegas market if they want to generate referral fees, right? Don't let them just sell the house and take off, figure out where they're going. And if 50% of our buyers are California based. So that was something we decided together was a great idea that we were going to take to the road this fall, and we'll probably carry it through next year as well. So we'll come down to Arizona next.
I love it. And shout out to Carlsbad, my friends and colleagues, Jim Crotwell and Rachel out there. You guys are awesome. So Mark, as you look ahead into 2022 and what's next for your business, what is one of the biggest areas of focus for you going into next year?
Doubling our production in the same 5 key verticals that we are focused in today by raising our awareness in the Valley. And now that I have a core team of 4 great agents, plus myself and Maria, plus the support team, we're ready to scale it, and then we will expand. So out of market, we'll focus a little bit more in other areas.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I want to transition us into the last segment of our show, which is 3, 2, 1 action. It's the same 3 questions we ask every single guest. And it sounds like you're vacuuming.
I think my landscaper just showed up.
Oh, that's what it is.
Oh, lawnmower or something.
I love it. Well, Let's go into 3, 2, 1 action. Here we go.
All right. First question, Mark. Who is the one person who has been most influential in your business and why?
Right, that's a toss-up. I'll let Buck and Kristen duke it out. I would say Buck only because I get the day-to-day access to him, and it's helped me escalate things a lot faster than just the training classes that I've attended with Kristen.
I would pay big money to see Buck and Kristen duke it out, honestly. All right, question number 2. If there is a book, what is the one book that's had the biggest impact on your business and why?
Ooh. Probably Profit First. Getting my financials in order was I was not the most fiscally responsible. I was a spender, and that really cleaned it up and allowed me to do the things I needed to do versus the things I wanted to do.
And the whole idea, just for our listeners behind Profit First, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, is to operate your business from a perspective of I need to make a certain amount of profit, and what's left over will equal what I can spend on expenses. So income minus profit equals expenses. It's a different way of structuring it to make sure that you're always paying yourself and that you're holding your business accountable to a profit margin before you try to make it bigger.
That's right. It helped me transform a lifetime of bad financial habits that, unfortunately, I didn't pick up any good habits from my family. So it allowed me to really kind of buck that mindset and have faith in that process. And it's still a learning process, but I've adapted to it pretty quickly, and it's really allowed us to do some fun stuff.
Love it. Great recommendation. Third question, Mark, as you know, this is the All In Podcast where we encourage our listeners to take what they've heard here today and to go put it into movement, right? Into action. So what's one action item that you would tell our listeners or give advice to our listeners to go take action on today to begin to move the needle forward in their business?
I would say find the one successful team owner or agent who is doing what you want to be doing, and invest the time in reaching out to them to see if you can shadow them, if they have classes, if whatever you can do to take from them, because most likely they're going to give it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole idea behind modeling, right? Find somebody who's a couple of years ahead of where you are or have what you have and do what they did to get there. Talk to them, create the relationship with them, find a reason, an excuse, some value you can offer them so that in return they're willing to give you some of their wisdom, and you can save so much time and not have to figure everything out the hard way.
And just like meeting with your team leader, come prepared with your questions in advance. Don't wait, because you're not going to get another chance.
So important.
Absolutely. Mark, this has been a lot of fun getting to know you, and you shared so much value. If our listeners want to connect with you again, where is the best place for them to do that? Where can they connect with you? Email
is the easiest, mark@markwileyrealty.com, or you can text me, 702-499-1915, and one of us will get in touch with you right away.
Awesome. We're going to link all this up in the show notes. As always, Mark, thank you for spending time with us. Listeners, thank you as always for investing time in yourselves with the All In Podcast. Joe and I really appreciate you. And as always, go play All In.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play All In.